to call this meeting to order. This is the North Miami Planning Commission, Tuesday, December 2nd, 2014, at 7 p.m., meeting in council chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Let's have the roll call of board members, please. Gentlemen, make sure your mics are on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kevin Seifert,
Present.
Charles Ernst,
Present.
Jean Castor,
Excused.
Kenny Each,
Present.
Jason James,
Present.
Bill Privatel.
Present.
All right, thank you very much. Now, do we have amendments to the agenda? I believe we do. Would you like to read those into the record?
The staff would like to recommend that item 18 would be heard first, and item 17 would be heard last.
All right.
As 18 is an ordinance which would precede the request under item number 17.
All right.
And also, the rezoning and land use plan amendment items 15 and 16 have been removed until the January meeting agenda.
Oh, okay.
At the earliest. All right. Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Now we need to approve minutes. I've been given two sets of minutes here. One for the October 7th meeting. Do I take it that you're missing a signed copy on that? Is that the purpose?
Yes.
You're missing the signed copy for some reason.
Well, they were brought back to be amended
Okay, they were brought back to be amended.
pursuant to Mr. Prevatel's.
Okay, so
amendment?
then we need a motion to approve the amended minutes of Tuesday, October 7th.
Motion to approve.
All right, motion made by Mr. Prevotel, seconded by Kenny Each. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's sign this one. And then we have the minutes of Thursday, November the 6th, 2014. Mr. Secretary? That's the first set. All right, then we have the minutes of Thursday, November 6th. Do we have a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Each, seconded by
I'll second.
Jason James. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Minutes are approved, or at least until they're amended. All right, Mr. Secretary, thank you. I have a question for staff at this time. Do we have a new secretary? Is that this, or is this an interim situation tonight?
It's an interim situation tonight. Our secretary, Ms. Brittany Duria, is now promoted to the position of senior planning technician.
All right.
As such, she will be resuming new duties, or has already resumed new duties. And until we get a new staff for the planning commissions to serve as planning commission secretary, Mr. Walia here is going to fill in for us.
All right, Mr. Walia, welcome to the Planning Commission. Congratulations, and look forward to some good service here. All right. We have no communications and no continued public hearings, so we will go to PC 18-14. This is an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of North Miami, Florida, amending Chapter 29 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Land Development Regulations by amending Article 3, Division 4, entitled Conditional Uses, at Section 3-409 entitled Appeals and Section 3-410 entitled Changes to Conditional Use Approvals to further clarify conditional use requirements for master plan developments, providing for conflict, severability, codification, and an effective date. Staff report, please.
Staff has a recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed ordinance to amend Article 3, Division 4, entitled Conditional Uses, at Section 3-409, entitled Appeals, and Section 3-410, entitled Changes to Conditional Use Approvals of the City's Land Development Regulations, LDRs, to further clarify conditional use requirements for master plan developments and forward said changes to the City Council for final consideration. The applicant, Oleta Partners LLC, has requested an amendment to Article 3, Section 3409 and Section 3410 of the city's LDRs. And this is an effort to obtain further clarity regarding the conditional use permit amendment provision, as well as the current appeal process. Section 3-410 seeks to clarify what constitutes a minor versus a substantial revision to a previously approved conditional use permit. This would allow the one of the sections 3-702, which already allows an applicant who disagrees with the decision of the DRC, which is Development Review Committee, to file an appeal with the Board of Adjustment. Additionally, the text amendment also seeks to add language to section, or rather new language, to Section 3-409 to make reference to the current appeal process. This allows the appeal of a final decision of the City Council to the Appellate Division of the Circuit Court. If I may go through a minor summary or quickly, on page 2 of 4, there are 6 bullets which identify the proposed text amendments. Section 3-409 allows an aggrieved party to appeal the City Council decision within 30 days. Section 3-410A2 talks about amending minor revisions, which proposes to amend the relocation of a major roadway from 5 feet to 10 feet, a difference of 5 feet. 3-410A7 again is a minor revision which proposes to permit relocation of a structure which has to be within a previously approved use through the DRC process or a previously issued conditional use permit only. 3-410A10 again is minor revisions which proposes to include modifications only to that which was approved in a previously issued and approved conditional use permit. Section 3-410C identifies the requirement to define what constitutes a substantial revision what constitutes a minor revision pursuant to subsection A, minor revisions. And lastly, Section 3-410D allows an aggrieved party to appeal an administrative decision by the Community Planning and Development Manager and or the Development Review Committee to the Board of Adjustment. Staff is of the opinion that the proposed amendments to Section 3-409 and 3-410 are consistent with the city's land development regulations and the comprehensive plan.
All right, thank you very much. This time we'll open the public hearing. And I assume we're going to hear a presentation by the developer. State your name and address, please.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Eileen Mehta. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Bills and Sundberg. My address is 1450 Brickell Avenue, and I am here tonight on behalf of Oleta Partners. We are the applicant for this particular text amendment, but of course this is a legislative change, so we have worked very, very carefully with your staff. This is something that we bring before you after considerable discussions with staff to make sure it's something that they agreed with. And the changes that we are proposing and that staff has recommended approval of are indeed relatively minor in nature, but they do clarify certain aspects of your code, and particularly as it applies to different properties. Let me mention one thing on the appeal process, for example. There's a reference in here about appealing a city council decision to the circuit court by a petition for writ of certiorari. This is just something that is the existing law. It's the way that it is done under the Florida Rules of Civil Procedure, or appellate procedure. It's just making it consistent with the law as we know it. Some of the other minor revisions, we want you to understand that you do have this in your code now. You have minor revisions and you have substantial revisions. A change in a roadway, for example, one of the minor revisions here, a change of 5 feet in a roadway, that might seem like a reasonable situation for maybe a 2-acre parcel. But when you're dealing with a parcel that maybe is 150 acres, such as the Alita Partners site, an adjustment of just an additional 5 feet is really not a major change. And we felt that that's something on an administrative level staff could look at and decide, yes, that's minor, that's consistent with the conditional use permit. And it would be something that the staff could approve administratively without the necessity of bringing the entire 150-acre site, for example, ours is larger than that, back for public hearing to the Planning Commission. So what we've tried to do is identify just some of those minor things that could be handled administratively. And so we support the staff recommendation. If you have further questions, we do have some people here in the audience, and I'd be happy to either try to answer or field answers to your questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I need a clarification on what you mean by wanting to change roadway from 5 feet to 10 feet. Can you give me an example as
Sure.
to what that would
Sure.
reference that
Okay,
particular point?
let's say, and I'm going to, because I'm familiar with the Alita Partners parcel, and I'm sure most of you are, it's 183 acres. There is a spine road that goes through that. There is also a little link road that may or may not be built. And that link road is required under the lease with the city of North Miami. And why is it there? It's there because sometime in the future, FIU may, if they get a permit to go through the mangroves, may want to have some access to FIU. We don't know right now exactly where that link may go. We don't know if it's going to be a walkway. We don't know if it's going to be a road. We just don't know at this point in time what it is. If it can just be adjusted within an extra 5 feet, for example, we think that on an administrative level is something that we could accommodate so that whatever FIU is able to get accomplished, we'll be able to link up and achieve what the city would like us to achieve, which is to have in all likelihood, a pedestrian link, but possibly even one that could be traversed by vehicles. So certain things on our plan are conceptual, and this will give us the ability to just make some minor adjustments if future conditions require it. And this is something that will be going on for many years, and we can't foresee necessarily every detail. But as long as it's small, a relatively small change, we'd like to be able to do that administratively. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I want to continue with one or the other bullet points,
Of course.
if we may also.
Of course.
Can you explain what you mean by proposing to permit the relocation of a structure within the area that is under the plan development?
Okay, let's say the CUP identifies certain types of uses. Let's say it might be residential, or it might be retail, or whatever, okay? And that particular use, once the use itself has been identified, that this is where the uses will go, when you actually come in and do the architecture, when you actually come in and I'll give you a perfect example. We have a maximum number of residential units. We may not build that maximum. We may build something considerably less than that maximum. And our parking spaces will be counted according to what we in fact build. So we may actually have more open space that we can deal with. We may put the parking in an area which is less obtrusive, and we might want to adjust that building for that specific use in order to accommodate that change. But we're not going to, for example, put an industrial use there or something like that. It's just really to make those minor adjustments to the location. And it's really because it will depend upon what those final numbers are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
All right, Mr. James?
On the second bullet point,
Yes.
I guess speaking about the shifting of the roadways,
Mhm.
are there any limitations to how many times, someone can submit a minor revision as the language is written right now? For example, let's say, you submit revised plans and you need to shift it to 10 feet. That's if this passes,
Okay.
right? And then you come back a month later and say, you know what, well, we need to shift it again another 10 feet. Is there any, limit to the, how much you can deviate from the original submitted document or something like that?
I see what you're saying, that we really want to change it by 100 feet and we do it in 10-foot increments every other month. I hadn't even thought of that, to tell the truth, but I see where you're coming from. There is nothing in here right now that prohibits that specifically, but I would suspect that your staff administratively might say, this is inconsistent with the spirit and intent of this ordinance, and they would deny it if they felt that it was circumventing the intent of the ordinance, and I'll defer to your attorney on that. But I think they'd have the ability to say, no, this is inconsistent with our intent, and we would deny it.
But I agree with you, but I prefer to have language.
Yes, because there's nothing to prevent you then from turning around and filing an appeal and dragging this out forever if we went down that road. And I think a limitation of some kind would be fair and reasonable.
I think the intent here is a maximum of 10 feet. So that means that if there's a deviation of 5 feet, you can do that twice. But I don't think you can do that. I don't think that it's the intent of the parties to allow a 100-foot variation by pushing it 10 feet 10 times. Language can be proposed by this commission indicating that, basically, specifically to this item.
Like percentage from what's originally submitted? I don't know if that. Oh no, you can't, because then if it's
The question is, how many bites of the apple do they get on that point?
I mean, I think one thing we might want to do might possibly be put a time frame on it and say that, for example, if we relocate the road, that we can't file another application for that same type of request and
Okay.
put a time frame, a year, 2 years, something in terms of when we would next file. I mean, let's face it, there are circumstances that could change, and you'd want to have the ability, if everything changes, to come back and make those adjustments. But I think a time limit is probably a reasonable limitation.
It's very.
Mr. Prevotel, I see you chomping at the
Well,
bit here.
Just regarding this concern, it is troubling that that this project has had an abusive past. We're talking about a few feet here and there. That really isn't such a problem. But this is also the project that, when 10 loads or 20 loads of contaminated fill came onto this site, it should have been reported. And instead it was 9,000 loads of contaminated fill. And this history has continued on this project, on every step of the way. It's to see what we can, get away with and cut the city short on. And it's kind of unfortunate. And I go back to nearly 2 years, 2 Januaries ago, when the original plan was submitted by Oleta Partners, and it was somewhat of a hellscape, and everybody remembers that. Yet that project was administratively approved. That was recommended to us, and thank God that this commission and the council were able to say, that's not what we need, and we need to rework this and reinvestigate this. So I'm troubled that if this was smooth to date, this would have no problem passing this, but we have not had smooth operations. And I don't know, I mean, I've gone to every city council meeting and a lot of the extra meetings and such. I don't know if everybody here is aware of the recent, the recent action to sell 50 acres, which then magically after midnight became an additional 20 acres at their discretion at their, at the same price. But we had something that was nothing less than a case of corporate colonialism. And I don't say that lightly. Where we have people from the outside come in and abuse our people, our resources, abuse the privilege of this site, pay an incredibly low amount for what it was because we were foolish enough to enter into a lease to begin with, and that lease was then used to portray the rest of our future. And we crucified ourselves on this. And I say this because as I was there and a few other people that were, and there were many people that were concerned, but not everybody could stick it out past midnight after a 3-hour break of hurried legal work. And I don't believe our attorneys at the podium would in any way condone such actions, that we take a 3-hour break on a council meeting or something and rush a contract to get something signed, unless it was completely into one's benefit. And so I don't think they would have, but we, however, went and signed it. And when this came out, all these measures that supposedly, well, we want a good project, a good end product, well, the safeguards of having the Planning Commission and therefore the City Council, and therefore, most importantly, possibly the public input, was denied, has been cut out of the process very conveniently. And the idea of that this was, being forwarded because of we had to do this for refinancing purposes for $20 million and such, with a claimed multi-billion-dollar group, but we had to bend over for that and to accommodate them. And then, not least, certainly, and certainly not last, is the idea of jobs, where we had particularly people of a Haitian background that are on a training program, and that's admirable to have this training program and to try to forecast using our local labor to meet these very minimal quotas. But between council meetings, this multi-billion-dollar company sees fit to lay them off for 2 weeks. We're talking like 24 people for 2 weeks. It was a real class move, And if there's nothing that said, we're using you up and down, it was that. And then you can find out that if you want to read into this contract that came out after midnight, it was voted around 1 o'clock or 1:30, whatever it was, that the provision of these quotas, even though we know, I'll use the word damn well, that they're going to take this property and pass it on at an extreme profit, as they took the original car dealership land and have passed it on for probably 10 times the income as we stand there watching. And it's, like a surprise. We're now going to sell them something for $20 million, which is worth, in my calculation, I could verify it for you with other documents, $220 million. And that's what they'll do, is they'll turn around and sell for $220 million, and they will, and they've not made no secret of that. But is it any surprise that one of these provisions is that the quotas do not apply to the people who will be buying it, inevitably and almost assuredly will be buying it? And we couldn't these quotas, which were so ridiculous. You could be a company in China and you rent 3 apartments here and you'd probably pass the quota, and yet that was even taken. So this is no surprise. And every step of the way, the city has gotten the short end of things, and it's been, I think it's time to say enough of this, to hold the line somewhere, and to, unfortunately our city council absolutely rolled over. Don't know what it was, still don't know what it was. I've spoken with real estate attorneys, with former mayors, with high-end brokers, with bank presidents. Their answer is there's something else. And I don't know what that something else is. Maybe I'm a little too naive, but none of the deal makes sense in no shape or form. Well, so now we're being asked to again facilitate this even further, facilitate our demise and the compromises to this project. And please remember that we're just advisory, so who knows what this is, and I have an idea what the next step would be. But we are just advisory, and there are measures that are in place. I think we should, if nothing else, at least for the sake of the public being able to be heard at the public forum, should they have a concern at some point regarding some issue. Really, because if it's very minor, if it's 5 feet here or there, I don't think any of us gonna, challenge that at all. It's certainly not worth the effort, and hopefully it would be for the better. But I think this lends itself to the potential for further abuse, and I would not like to see that any more than what has happened. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
May I
Mr.
just
Prevotel.
briefly make
Yes,
a comment?
Counselor.
Commissioner Prevotel, most respectfully, I will agree to disagree with some of your comments and just leave it at that. But I would like to say just two quick things. First of all, this is a text amendment. It's something that's going to apply to every property owner throughout the entire city. Although we are a proponent of this change, this is not something just for Alita Partners. And I don't want you to think that this is a site-specific item. The next item on the agenda, yes, but not this one. And also to keep in mind that there is a provision for an appeal of an administrative decision in your code. So if there is a problem with something, people have the right to seek a process and seek an administrative appeal, which would go to a hearing. So it's not being obliterated, it's still there. And that's part of your code, and that's not changing.
All right, let's move on with this. Mr. James, you've raised a valid point. The chair certainly finds a request once a year to be a reasonable recommendation. And Mr. Galdos, would that such language be easily incorporated into this?
Yes, sir. We can submit this to for final approval by the mayor and city council, with the inclusion or the recommendation that this board has made, and we can place a comma right after the 10 feet and indicate that within a period of 1 year, meaning that should in 1 year the applicant comes forward and wants to move the road 10 feet, then within 3 months or within the period of 1 year, the applicant comes back and says, you know what, geez, we need another 10 feet. Well, that's now a substantial modification. That now we'll have to go through the planning commission for approval because it's already beyond the scope of what would be considered minor.
Yes.
Right? Concur? So if you put that provision in there, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It only means that if they desire any more than that within that period of time, then they would have to go before this board for an approval.
All right, does that seem reasonable to you?
It seems reasonable to me, yes.
Do we
Seems
have
reasonable to.
Another point to bring up, Mr. James?
No, sir. That was it. He clarified at the end.
All right, gentleman to my right, Mr. Ernst, do we understand that?
I understand. I
Chief
concur.
Each? All right, we concur on that. Do we need a motion to adopt that particular recommendation, or should we just sum it all up at the end?
I think we should sum it all up at the end so that we can summarize in one report to City Council your recommendations for approval. Obviously, the option here is you have 3 options. You deny, you approve, or you approve with amendments or modifications. So that's your option, and then we can supply that to the City Council in one package.
All right, thank you very much. Now, gentlemen, do we have any issues with the remaining bullet points?
No, sir.
Hearing none, is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this at this time? Any member of the public? Well, I hear no thundering herd. I see no rising cloud of dust, so I would assume that no member of the public desires to address this point. Therefore, the public hearing is closed. Chair will call for a motion.
Make a motion we approve.
All right, Mr. Reach moves to approve with the recommendation of a year.
I'll
All
second
right,
that motion.
seconded by Mr. James. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
All right, so be it 4-1. Thank you very much. All right. Now, PCs, we're doing 17-14 here, right? A resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending the previously issued conditional use permit and conceptual master development plan for Tract A of Biscayne Landing plat in accordance with Article 3, Section 3-405 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances, Land Development Regulations, providing for an effective date and for all other purposes. Staff report, please.
The staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed resolution to amend the previously issued conditional use permit and conceptual master development plan for Tract A of Biscayne Landings plat, subject development, in accordance with Article 3, Section 3-405 of the city's Land Development Regulations, LDR, and forward said resolution to City Council for final consideration. At this time, I would like to draw the attention of the board to two amendments or typos that need to be looked at. Staff report, page 5 of 9, line number 1 on the top of the page, states section 3-4.
Top of the page,
Page 5 of 9.
based on the criteria outlined in section 3-410, should read 3-405 of the city's
So instead
LDR.
of 410, it's 405.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is the other correction?
The other correction is the actual conditional use permit at the back of the staff report,
Page
page B12.
Would be right after
B12.
Page 4 of 9 and then goes 509.
B5, B13, B12. All right, I'm on B12.
Item number F, second line.
F as in Frank, okay.
Yes, F as in Frank, second line where it says condition 7B,
Yeah,
it should be 6 instead of 7.
okay, change that to 6. All right, that's, all right, B12.
Okay, and which line?
Letter F, it's almost to the bottom. Second sentence begins with the word proposed. At the end of the sentences, it says condition 7B. It should be 6B of this cup.
Gotcha, okay.
All right?
In addition, Mr. Chair, I do have a couple on B4.
On B4, okay. Let's
Anywhere it states the acting mayor, the portion acting should be stricken from the language. And it appears on the first whereas and on the third whereas,
all
the
right,
acting
the first
mayor.
whereas, what are we changing?
Striking the word acting.
Acting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I see. Since we've had elections, it's no longer acting. All right.
That's
very
correct.
Good. And then the third whereas as well, we strike the word acting. All right. Do you have any other corrections, sir?
No, sir. But I would like to remind the chair as a point of order that this item is quasi-judicial in nature, and anyone other than the attorney speaking on this matter or that desires to speak on this matter is required to take the oath. So at this moment, if I may,
All right, you
I would
may,
like to
sir.
administer the oath.
Anyone
Planning to speak on this item, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You may
All right.
proceed.
At this time, does staff want to read into the record purpose and intent?
Yes, sir.
All right, please do that.
Right. This application relates to is pursuant to section 3-410 of the city's LDRs, which currently allows for both minor and substantial revisions to a previously approved conditional use permit. Oleta Partners is requesting an amendment to the previously approved conditional use permit and conceptual master development plan for the proposed Biscayne Landings project. And this request is specifically in order to clarify and expressly outline what constitutes a minor versus substantial amendment.
All right.
It should be noted, if I may continue, it should be noted that this project, the proposed amendment, does not increase the amount of development, nor does it modify any previously approved development standards related to lot size, heights, setbacks, or density and intensity of the previously approved uses. If the board may look at page 4 of 9 of the staff report, it outlines a summary table which states previously approved uses, proposed uses, and the difference. And it can be seen that there is no difference as aforementioned development was stated, meaning no change in density, intensity, uses, and such. The only change is an increase of 1.3 acres of open space. So based on the analysis, the staff is of the opinion that the project is consistent with 3-405 of the LDRs and is also consistent with the comprehensive plan. And staff recommends approval based on the conditions stated in the staff report.
All right, this time we'll open the public hearing, and I'm assuming we have a presentation from the developer.
I'm back. Once again, my name is Eileen Mehta, and although I have several people with me tonight, I am hoping that you will only need to hear from one witness, but recognizing that I may not have all the answers to your questions, I've brought some other folks who might be able to answer questions that you may have. Clearly, we are in support of your staff recommendation. Our modifications to the conditional use permit are very minor, and I would like at this time to introduce Mr. Robert Bailing, our architect. I will hand his CV to your secretary and ask him to come up now. He will show you the previous plan as well as the proposed plan and walk you through it so you understand what we're requesting.
We have only one set of this.
Did we get a copy of this?
Apparently not.
Staff, did we get the same copy beforehand? Or is
Any
this
other
the first time
copies?
that we're getting this? Is this what was included in our?
All right, so this is basically essentially a modified resume of the architect. That's what this is. All right, it just lists qualifications and projects.
But I guess my question again, Mr. Chairman, is what material do we have? Do we
I
have the same
suspect we're
material
going,
that's being
yes, we have
presented?
the same material that they have
That's
pictured there.
What I need to find out.
Okay. All right, sir, would you care to proceed? State your name, your relationship to the project, where your business address is, and then,
My name
Yep.
is Bob Bailing. I'm a planner and landscape architect with EDSA, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm going to walk through six different images that will outline the current plan for the development. All right, this first image is a regional context plan you are all familiar with the site, so I won't go into great detail with it, but the red outline is that of the subject property. This is a land use plan outlining the various land uses of the plan. You can see the spine road indicated in an orange-yellow, yellow-orange that wraps through the property. That is an unchanged alignment from the previous plan. In the central portion of the plan, the tan-colored is designated as a commercial, hotel, and limited residential zone. The blue to the south, north is to the left of the screen. The blue parcel on the south side is residential with limited commercial. The parcel to the east is residential with limited commercial. property in the fuchsia color on the north side is mixed use and a hotel. The green is a mixed use parcel. The automobile dealership is in the purple zone. The active park area is designated in the chartreuse screen, which is on the lower right-hand side of the screen. And the active and the passive park is green, and it follows the spine road, and then the next image will outline that a bit further. This is an image of what a plan might be utilizing those land uses. It represents a bit more detail, keeping the spine road where it is. Looking at secondary roadways on the south parcel designated as residential, a loop road linking up each one of those, the residential buildings. Same designation on the east parcel with the loop road going in, feeding each one of the residential units. Those all tie up and link and tie to the commercial development in the center of the plan, and on down feeding the various land uses in the mixed use parcel. This is a parks and open space plan. Starting with the dark color in the lower right is the active play area. That is an area designated with a couple ball fields just to denote the size of the area. The blue-green represents the passive park area, which runs along the road, and then it ties to a trail system on the outside of the property. And the green represents, the basic green overall is the open space. This diagram represents circulation for bicycles and pedestrian. The blue indicates a route for bicycles and hiking trails, which takes you on the perimeter of the property. It also goes along the spine road and again links up all of the various parcels. The red dashed line represents the pedestrian corridors, again linking up the various parcels, taking people from the residential zone into the commercial zone and back the other way. The more orange color on the upper side of the screen represents the proposed road that connects, if it does connect, with FIU.
Is that mangroves back there?
There are mangroves.
That's an endangered area. How can you?
That is correct.
How can you even?
We're not necessarily proposing that. It's a.
May I?
Let the man.
As I understand it, it's a condition of the lease that we have the availability there if it should happen in the future. Personally, I think it's unlikely that it'll happen in the future, but if that's what the city wants us to do and approvals are granted in the future, then that access area will be reserved.
But again, to councilors' attention, DERM or state regulations would override any sort of proposed use of that.
That is
being
correct.
Access, is that correct?
That is correct. They're highly protected species,
Right,
mangroves, so it would require
right.
Para's approval.
I just question as to why they even would want that as a part of the concept. That's
Well, if you remember, that's there at the request of FIU. They're gambling that they're eventually going to get such approvals. Whether they ever do or not, who knows? But that's why that's there.
May I take a stab at this?
You may take a stab, but please be brief.
Okay. If we had gone to the city council meeting some months back, we would all know that this tract of land, the supposed mangrove preserve, was up for grabs. They were auctioning it for, were offering it for development in its entirety. Therefore, if the state feels that lowly about this piece of land, I guess there'd be little or no problem in doing some sort of walkthrough or fly-through or any other type of development of it if they saw it as officially accessed. It was due to the public outrage, myself and others, who spoke up that said, I mean, the Biscayne Landing site is enough development at this time, and not to go hog wild and develop this further wetlands any further. And luckily the council was in support of that, made efforts to contact the state, and the state has since retracted their their availability of the land, and it remains a bit of a preserve. But that said, it shows that it was accessed and shows that we probably could have a very feasible either walkway path or flyover for automobiles. And if it was right through the center, that the very top of the sheet went through the center, it would line up exactly with the front gate of FIU. The meandering path, that bump to the right, is a former path of just a heap of dirt that's semi-continuous and would not be very pleasant for women students and such to go through at various hours, as opposed to something that might be more direct through the center of the
One assumes
site.
that is a testament to the lobbying of FIU to throw that parcel up for grabs.
Well, I would, exactly, it could be that, but also I would think it would be to the benefit of both Biscayne Landing, our letter partners, and to FIU to have that connection, so there'd be a synergy between the two organizations, the two entities.
Well, that will wait until the university gets a little more leeway.
So let's hope that it is planned for in as convincing a way as possible.
I agree with that, and of course, this is all preliminary anyway. All right, go ahead, sir.
Yes, this last diagram is just a vehicular access and circulation diagram. The green designates the tie-in to the existing roads, 151 on the north and at 143rd tying into.
Not on the screen.
Yeah, whatever happened to your image, it got dropped. All right, there we go.
Good.
All right. The red road designates the major road, which is the boulevard. The green, as I was saying, is the connecting points on the outside roads at 151st and 143rd. The yellow are secondary roads. Those are the roads that link up the residential parcels and designated as such. And that concludes the images that I have.
All right, thank you.
Are there any three-dimensional images?
There are not.
No massing, no three-dimensional even massing diagrams?
No, we do
massing
not have.
studies? Okay.
I have a question of your land use plan you have up. I'm not sure if I missed it, but did you identify what those red portions of land are?
Those are retention basins.
Oh, for stormwater?
Detention, stormwater.
Okay.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Ernst, you have a question. Go ahead, sir.
If you could, it's more of a point of information for me. With regards to where you have not, on the previously proposed uses of a residential unit, I'm referring to page 4 of 9, where you list the previous approved uses and the proposed uses. What you've done is essentially you've in your previous approved uses, you listed 560 elderly assisted living units, and I see that you combine those in on your new proposed use, and you've stated that you now have 4,315 multi-family units and/or assisted housing units. In other words, you have not determined whether or not you would want to build more elderly housing units or less housing units or more family units. What was your thinking with why you wanted to combine this? What was the logic behind this?
We're going to ask Mr. Herb Tillman to respond to that
Thank you.
question.
State your name, your address, your relationship to the project, sir.
Okay, my name is Herb Tillman. The address is 15045 Biscayne Boulevard. That's my office. I am the project executive in charge of the Biscayne Landing project, and I report to Olita Partners. And good evening, by the way, commissioners. Thank you for coming here tonight. The question had to do with the elderly living, and we've been talking about this for about 2 years now. It makes all the sense in the world to us and to several members of the city staff that have been interested in this, and we've, in the meantime, been speaking to at least 6 different elderly living operators and their advisors. And so we don't know if that number at the end of the day is going to be 100 or if it's going to be 800. It's a 1-for-1 trade for residential units. But to date, we don't have one operator that's been able to tell us what works best in their business plan on leased property. That's the biggest problem they have getting over. The location is the best. They all love the location. We have even spoken at length with this plaza group that is locally, that has about 4 facilities in this city. But they have a problem getting their financiers used to the concept of building a facility on leased property. They prefer that it be fee simple. And you know, one of the things we're working on with the city right now may allow that to happen. So we today do not know the number of elderly living facility units that would make the most sense. That's why we lumped them together with the densities that they take from.
I have a question as well.
I guess the question to staff or to this panel is, if that unit, if the elderly assisted housing portion was not feasible, or if it was not doable, would that, what kind of an impact would that have in the proposed use change from the previously approved units? In other words, are we saying okay to
Does
the
it
fact that
constitute
we
a major
may,
change or a minor
Yeah.
change?
I mean,
Okay, if that is dropped.
if this is a major change or a minor change, language-wise, because it could affect the fact that with cost of not having to incur the cost of building that, and then that cost shifting over to doing away with elderly altogether, or that component of the process. Is that a possibility, that could go away?
I hope I'm going to respond to your question, and if I'm not, get me on the right path. The fact that there are the possibility of some flexibility in the type of occupant for a unit is not something that is typically assessed in
Right.
terms of impacts, okay? Because zoning, as you know, goes with the land,
Right.
not with the occupant. However, with regard to the traffic studies, the unit count, the residential unit count, for example, is going to be based on what would be the maximum impact for a residential unit. Now, I think we all realize that if you're dealing with assisted living, you're going to have a lesser impact on traffic. So we've looked at the worst case scenario in terms of the studies. We've accounted for that. And in terms of the types of impacts that are properly considered in a zoning context, it is being assessed according to that sort of like a worst case scenario. In this case, if we do have, elderly, if anything, the impacts are going to be less. And in terms of looking at occupant, that's not typically what we would do in a zoning context. So in terms of your standards for whether or not you approve a conditional use permit, it wouldn't go to major or minor because it's not even a consideration.
I think another way maybe we might look at that would be comparing the Plaza project on Dixie Highway to Douglas Gardens. Douglas Gardens is a complete campus facility with multiple buildings and multiple uses and a number of options that have been developed into that campus. The Plaza facility on Dixie that we see there is, by comparison, quite small. And they're dealing conceptually with this plan with the total number of units, however they're used.
Right.
So, right
Well,
now
I
it's
guess
very
I just
flexible
question
and-
whether or not it's even relevant to the overall amount of multifamily units. I mean, if it went away, you'd still get your 4,315 units. But legally, you're not bound to have to build X amount of elderly assisted living units. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct. We're capped at the total number of residential units,
Right.
but the type of occupant within those units, we are not bound to a particular number.
So currently you're looking or anticipate looking for a business model that would be appropriate. one issue that may hinge on that is whether or not you can sell the land outright. Okay, I understand that.
As I'm sure you all know, financing leasehold mortgages is a little more complicated than a fee simple type of financing. So it becomes a little more of a challenge.
Not so much when it's a 99-year lease, when a 30-year mortgage can proceed 3 times during that period. So it's no problem with the banks as far as I know. I don't think it's a problem with the Oaks. And elsewhere, we've had testimony publicly regarding that, even though it's been used by the developers on occasion.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one more thing?
Yes, you may.
I wanted to address the 3-star hotel.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all had visions of it being a 5-star hotel and a St. Regis being there. And now we're looking at something of a 3-star hotel. Are we looking at an economy inn? Are we looking at
What we're
Hilton
looking at is a
Gardens?
building that's going to be overlooking the water treatment plant.
Right,
And smelling the water
Not
treatment
going
plant.
to be
right.
And when they step out of the car, they can turn around and get back into their
a
car.
serious conference facility or a competitive place for Fuller Brush salesmen to hold a meeting, I'm sure. When the hotel was on the south side, there was a serious possibility of a nice facility being built.
Well, let me say, we certainly share your vision. Whether or not we can bring that vision to reality, I don't know. But I will say 2 things about that. It's 3-star because, again, our lease says at least 3-star. So it's
Say
really
that again,
just
I'm sorry.
mirroring.
It's a 3-star because what?
It says at least 3-star because it mirrors the language in the lease with the city. But I will comment that we've got 2 possible locations for the hotel. There's one in the, well, I'm going to walk around and I hope you can hear me. We've got one possibility up here and we have one possibility down here.
So you're looking at center or north?
Yes, it might be a 4-star, it might be a 3-star, depending upon
Can I get an example of a 4-star versus a 3-star?
You know, I'm going to ask Mr. Tillman.
Please, I kind of feel deflated by that because all along we were talking about a 4-star, and all of a sudden it disappears, and you know the horse is already outside the barn, and I want to see this project get going, but.
Yeah,
You know, we're told one thing, and then, and the other thing I just wanted to bring up, Mr. Tillman, when you're here, thank you. We are definitely building condos, high-end condos. Am I
Yes, sir.
correct in this? We're not going to have, a couple of years down the line, we're going to end up with affordable housing out
I
there.
don't believe there's anything in writing, and there's nothing with the status deal.
Excuse
No.
I want to make sure of that, and go ahead, sir. I don't
Is
know.
there anything
Affordable
legally
housing is one business model that does not work on that site. So if that, gives you any
Well,
level
we
of
are
comfort. but
building high-end condos.
We are
out
building
there.
high-end
No ifs,
condos.
ands, and buts.
The whole purpose of purchasing the 50 acres was exactly for that product. All 4,370 odd units.
So
of
May I
it.
ask, is
we
it- is
have
that
you
no-
on, sir.
Kenny,
no,
may I
please.
ask,
Well, let me
is that
finish.
now
Let-
is that now
let-
written in the
let-
contract? Is that now written in the contract
Let
that will be
Kenny
condominiums?
get through his sentence, don't overtalk.
So I have your word on the record that we are building high-end condos, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Now,
thank
one
you.
thing you do have to understand is in a community of this size, you do have to go through a seeding exercise, which you've probably seen in the past, where you build the condominium building with the condominium units, but you rent them out after you get 2 or 3 buildings up and convert them to condos. ZOM is one of the world premier developers in this neighborhood that uses that business model, and it works quite well to seed a
Wow.
large community quickly. Okay,
You know,
but
Mr.
again, the
Tillman,
level of finish is exactly the same.
I certainly don't want to see any switch in, bait and switch, as we would say. When you first came before us, we were told we were going to build apartments and then later on sell them as condos. And I just want to make absolutely sure, now this is a prime market and I'm not a real estate expert, but I want to make sure that this is what we're building. We're building a high-end condo, a good product out there, and this is what we're going to be doing. Not-
Exactly. All right, back to the hotel, if
Okay.
I may. The hotel, to give you, I guess, an example of a 4-star plus hotel, the Gaylord Palms in Orlando is a good example of that. I believe the Westin Diplomat is a good example of that, particularly with the upgrades that they're committing
That's a
to
four-star.
doing. Yes. A 3-star hotel is, I don't know, what is that, like a Clarion or one of those lower grades? That's not going to help us. That's not what we have in our mind as a premier facility or product to have on our site. We need a 4-star operator to come in here, a major flag representative, to come in here and tell us this product that we have is going to work on this site. Once they study the demographics, they study the rest of the site plan that you're seeing right here. And that's the one thing that we just haven't pursued at any great length yet, because we believe that the residential product has to lead the market. The commercial product is going to have to follow pretty close behind, and within the first 4, 5, maybe 6 years, then we bring the hotel to the site when it can actually be supported and thrive.
So we're looking at, like, you would say like a Hyatt, Marriott, that range?
That's the minimum. That's at least that we have to
Okay.
deliver by the terms of the
All right.
lease. We want to bring the Gaylord Palms, the Westin Diplomats. That's what we want here.
Okay. One other question I had, sir. I noticed in the copious files that we had here, and I was reading where you're gonna go 25 stories on top of a 5-story parking garage. That's the general concept throughout the site plan, five stories of parking garages, and those parking garages are gonna be landscaped and beautiful to look at?
That's right. That's right. And that's only in the condition where we have the residential units perched atop.
On top? It's
Right.
It's okay.
We're limited to 25 stories if the residential building stands alone and the parking garage is separate, which you see out there already is not the most attractive product in the world.
One of the things that we have coming up, and I've been kind of a bug with this, with the planning commission and parking garages, is we have our land use ordinance coming up, and hopefully our council, as we review this, will have the wisdom to go high. I hope so. You know, we have a lot of areas that we can redevelop. I mentioned this before, Northwest 7th Avenue, Biscayne Boulevard, so forth and so on. And let's just say hypothetically we throw the ball out there and a bolt of lightning hits some people and we do go higher.
Right.
And we do raise the height limit in your project. Would you be willing to go higher?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I would absolutely,
And
because
that would
land
be-
prices are going up every day, and it costs you more to build on a piece of property.
Would the higher the building, would that give you more of an expensive product to market?
What it does allow you to do is it allows you to build a higher end product in the residential units because
higher
you're
end.
building on less square footage of footprint, and it allows you to build the amenities up to a level that's going to attract the higher end buyers.
Okay, so that would help. Okay, I just wanted to pick your
Absolutely.
brain on that. Has nothing to do with this, but I
Right.
thank you for your input. The higher, the better, the more of a marketable product, the more of a marketable product, the more money we would make.
That's right, ocean
Thank you.
views, the whole works.
But with height, I just would like to remind the commissioner, with height comes an increase of density. So
Right.
there's two
Right.
sides of that coin that have to be worked at, an increase in height and an increase in density, because now you
So
have
then we
more
go back-
population living in the same
I
footprint.
would like to be able to, and this is just, I'm just throwing it out there, you know, the greatest plans of men and mice go asunder. If we have to increase the density, I would say let's do it if it's gonna benefit the city and give us a great project. I like to see a beautiful project out there. I don't wanna see, excuse my French, a half, you know what project. I wanna see something beautiful out there. And, you know, we have right now in our hands the ability to do it. And with this land use ordinance coming up, if we have to increase the density, I would like to see Mr. Tillman come back to the drawing boards, and let's do it. Let's rock and roll,
Okay.
let's do something nice out there. Look, the horse is already out of the barn. I didn't necessarily agree with the project and so forth and so on. I can't stop it now. But what we can do is improve upon it. And I certainly don't wanna hold it back. I wanna see a beautiful project out there. That's what we all want up here, and enough of my pontificating.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Kenny. I believe Mr. Prevotel is
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
chomping
Appreciate
at the
Well,
bit to charge down
well,
that runway.
I know that we sometimes get caught on these nuances and the best intentions, and I too would like to see the best of projects there. And we keep on, and maybe our city as a whole, keep on falling to this trap of fooling ourselves. and it's very sad. Rather than saying we're one of the 10 best cities in the country, and I'm not too sure if we're one of the 10 best cities in Miami-Dade County, and rather than heralding that, I'd rather say let's get down to actually making it a better city. Let's do everything we can and optimize our city. And in this case, I'd like to say let's optimize this plan. I see that it's formalized more than previously, and that may entice some people. And it's spread out and there's plenty of landscaping. But, and it's yet another one of these stages that we've gone from plans from Architectonica and SWA and Kobe Carp and now EDSA and all good firms. I don't know if it's always their best foot forward, though, or for whatever reason that is. I don't think it's their best work by any means. But when we look at this, we see a somewhat formalized plan. And I'd like to say what we're looking for, and what Commissioner Kenny Each here is looking for, is a sort of a finely tuned piano, something that really works, something that's elegant, something that has multiple dimensions, and something to offer everyone. And just because it starts to look like a piano, if it doesn't have a keyboard and it tells you to blow on this side and the sound comes out this side, you don't have a piano. It's not really the same thing. And as I look at this plan, and that's why I wish there were three-dimensional perspective drawings of the plan, because I think we'd start to see a few things. A few things that have been discussed, a list of things that have been discussed for the period of the last 2 years. There are shortcomings of the project, and yet, as far as I can tell, almost none of them have been addressed, and we still have this series of shortcomings. And what we have here mostly is we have project-type housing. Gathered, they've circled the wagons, and we have project-type housing of towers that, again, look into each other. High-rise, new construction, looking across out their window to more high-rise construction, just like the projects up north, just like everything we've tried to avoid. They still have the parking garages that are maybe not up front on the street. Luckily, that's changed, but they're still very prominent and in the back. And it's not where the building is on top of it, but that they are located a little bit to the side and to the back. But still very, very prominent on the site, and not necessarily utilizing a little bit more than utilizing the downward slope at the perimeter of the property. We also have retail that, as we've said before, we've taken sort of, well, let me say this. Within the last few weeks, an article came out regarding retailing in the United States, and top of the list was the Bal Harbor shops at more than $3,000 per square foot of revenue. And in that top 10 was also our Adventura Mall at about $2,000 per square foot. And then there were some other ones there in Florida as well. In that top 10 of the nation, and in this market, in this region of just a few miles to the east and a few miles to the north, we cannot find a way of siphoning off that energy. When people are in fact leaving some of these malls because the rents are too high, of not siphoning off that energy and creating some sort of better attraction. And instead, what we're doing is we're, again, falling to this lowest common denominator. I've referred to this this arrangement of buildings, these freestanding buildings, this network of, this orthogonal network as like a swap shop in Fort Lauderdale and other barrack-type buildings. And I don't think we want to be called the barracks at Biscayne Landing, but that's sort of what it looks like. I was at a project recently in South Miami, and it wasn't all that pleasant. It may not have been as bad as some of the 50s and 60s prototypes, but this was not a highly pleasurable experience going from building to building outside, linear walkways. This is really set up, let's not fool ourselves, this is set up to be outlet shops. It really has all the earmarks of outlet shops, not high-end retail, not something that's very inviting. And the entire site is not someplace where someone who doesn't live here says, oh, look at that, I'd really like to go. There's a reason I really want to go there. Well, maybe if you have to get cheap shoes or something, you may wind up going there, but there's not really a special place and space that says that's so inviting, and I want to take part in that and want to have the rest of our community go there and to host great events and all. The car dealerships, you know, we've done our best to put those on our academic corridor that leads into an elementary school or senior high school and a university. And what a shame it is that that'll be the first impression of going into this academic corridor, is that you're going to be passing car dealerships. There was also the concern for the open space of the formal park space, and as much as it's been mentioned in the past, it remains in the same location. And it's so strikingly odd that the formal park is at the southwest corner of the building, at the low end, where the site is the lowest, where it really doesn't serve the proposed housing so well, doesn't really serve the rest of North Maumee so well. It's really sort of a residual element and put there. And supposedly, in that space, which is already mostly taken up by one soccer field and one baseball field, very little parking, is supposed to be able to accommodate a school. And we really know that that's not the best place for a school either, that really doesn't fit so well. And yet the opportunity of having that land, which is so close to Biscayne Boulevard, and which connects to another street, right? It's at the end of a street right now, which is dead-ended onto the property, that could have brought in trucks servicing the retail. But instead, we're not going to take advantage of that. And it would have also lessened the load on the two primary points of access and egress. So we're not taking advantage of that either. I already mentioned earlier about the FIU connection. That is something that really should have been capitalized on. If we capitalized on that and said, hey, we have housing for the FIU students, maybe they could walk to and from classes rather than, again, further congest 151st Street, have people further congest Biscayne Boulevard, and you would also have better life with both the retail and the housing. You would have, as I said before, a synergy of which that has not been promoted. Instead, we again go back to tying into this dirt hump, this 2-foot-high partial dirt hump meandering through the woods as being our primary connector. And I don't think that shows vision or anything convincing in terms of being able to make a connector, a true, meaningful relationship with the school on the other end, especially when it is within 1 or 2 degrees of the main entrance and could be quite the axis, the east-west axis. All these things were mentioned. I'd say there was a public display. That's why I can bring this up publicly. Some weeks back at a council meeting, I discussed all these concerns, broke it down into 10 points. And all 10 of these, I don't know if the camera could pick up on this or not, all 10 of these items were addressed at the council meeting. And we were hoping that maybe 1 or 2 things were picked up, if not capitalized on all of them. And unfortunately, it seems like none of them were. You know, to after all of that, to show that, and this was done as an example, not that you have to, but as a minimum benchmark, to be able to have this central park, to have high-rise buildings, to have guaranteed distant views, to have retail that had storefronts facing onto the 4,300 apartments across the park, to have a simplified circulation. The circulation here, I mean, there's more asphalt and more meandering around here than is necessary, which then costs more in terms of civil services. I don't know why we've gone out of our way to do that. It's harder to install. It's harder to build out. It's harder to police. And you have all this residual space, leftover space between all these buildings, which sprawl across the site. And yet, you know, we keep going that route rather than a self-surveilling park that could have worked. The self-surveilling park, which had from 2 years ago almost, had a hotel at the end, at the south end, which would have worked adjacent to the retail, which would have been adjacent on the other side to the residential, would have had the best of both worlds. It was at the south part where the best view would be, It was at the end of a half-mile axis, which would have given it the prominence that you're looking for. And believe me, you're not going to get someplace to show up here, you know, up against the street, across the street from the landfill well, it's on landfill, across the street from water treatment. As soon as people step out of their car, they go, oh, thank you, maybe not, I think I'll go elsewhere. And it was specifically designed to be at the furthest most southern point, which also would have allowed for expansion, and God knows, even if you wanted a casino or something in there, that was also accommodated and included, as well as an indoor potential ability for an indoor mall, whether it be box stores or an indoor mall, filling up the area that's closest to Biscayne Boulevard and southernmost on the site, which would have been in line and in same proximity with Target and Costco and Publix, rather than being pushed back into the site, making it more difficult to get to. So all these things combined, I don't understand. I go down that list of 10 things, and that was a brief list, the 10 items. I don't know if I covered every one of them here. But, well, it doesn't have really a central space either that you'd say I want to go to. We want to have large public events or concerts or antique shows or whatever it might be that would bring in a large number of people to bring pride to our city and pride to this community. That could also be a sales tool to say, wow, I showed up to a certain event there, it was wonderful, and look, if I had an apartment here, I could have watched this concert, I could have participated in this, I could have been part of this great activity. There's no chance of great activity in this space. There just isn't. The space isn't there. Even the lake that's proposed on the southern part is blocked by what I'm guessing are kiosks. So even as you drive around the lake, it's just this continuous bombardment of linear kiosks. It's so sprawled out. It, unfortunately, to me, it does not really amount to anything. It amounts to 2 sets of project-type housing. And the reason probably why we don't have this aerial view, perspective view, is because if you put yourself from any of these points of perspective, you will in fact see looking across into other buildings. You will then see looking onto the sea of roofing that is in the central part of the site. As you look to the west, it will be a sea of roofing. If you had backed it up and made it more continuous, you would have been looking at facades. But when they start to get close to those facades, the one-story facades that they're proposing at the edge of that street, what you'll see is just a blip and then this continuous roofing, even though there are breaks in it. So all these things are very disturbing. I think it's compromised the value of the land. I think it's compromised the value of future development, the feasibility of this succeeding. I think it's been just an amazing shortcoming, and every time this plan had been out, took off time to do this, just to solve problems, issued it about 8 or 9 months ago, and every time it gets a little closer to it, but it's like the piano example, it really isn't the piano. And could we meet this and beat this? I think so. I think if we wanted to, we could do everything this does, which is solve all those problems and proceed with something that everybody could buy into. And I think it's unfortunate that, this is our plan du jour. There have been many plans in between. Nothing still seems to have this conviction or a way of really embracing what our community might want or what our community might need. It is basically, a series of high-rises, a series of block buildings, a series of car dealerships, an ill-placed hotel, and then just sprinkled around it is some landscaping to cover up our sins in a way. The site is 184 acres. 184 acres. What was supposedly sold is 50 acres. Now, to me, that's between a quarter and a third of the site, but definitely less than a third of the site. And you look at the blue, and it seems like the blue is a little bit more than a third, probably more than half, maybe even 2/3 of the site. So I don't quite get how that works out either. Whereas there was something that did work with pure 50 acres, would have worked with all the housing and such there and still have a public park that was available to be used and utilized. Again, not forced upon the developers, but offered for free so that they could then improve on those concepts.
Bill,
So
can you?
I cannot, yeah, I'll wrap up by saying, I
Wrap it
cannot
up.
stand behind this. I don't think it's in the best interest of our city. I think, again, we've been shortchanged. They have every ability to do this in a better fashion, but once again, it is not. And I'm not too sure what tomorrow's plan will be, because there probably will be another completely different plan tomorrow, rather than finding some really good principles to grasp onto and to keep on working those and to rationalize it. But we never get, as I have always tried to do with these concerns, to go down very methodically, very pragmatically, very objectively, to go why you want the housing lined up and not looking to each other, why you want the retail back to back with existing retail, why you want a central space, why you want these connectors, why you want the hotel away from the god-awful smell of a water treatment plant to maybe get that extra star, if you have any chance of getting this extra star. And yet, every plan we've received, there's never any sort of justification. And I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm afraid that the justification has been, it's all by market conditions. And I used to swallow that for the first few months until I realized that it's all about market conditions. It's all about whether we can get Dick's Sporting Goods in there or Dick's Fine Foods or Dick's whatever it is to rent space. But we won't give them a good vision of what to buy into. We'll just try to get them on first, and then we'll sort of con them into it as well. And I find it very disturbing. This is not something that I would look forward to visiting. I don't think anybody else in our city would look forward to visiting this. It's similar, although different, from the proposal 2 years ago. It's still very troubling, and I call upon our commission to consider that likewise, that our city can and should do better. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Prevotel.
About the open space.
Do you want to comment, Mr. James, or?
Yes.
All right,
yes.
go ahead.
From page 4 of 9, the staff report. I see on the last item on the table that was drafted, it says previously approved uses was no less than 35.7 acres of open space. And then the next column where it says proposed use, it says no less than 37 acres of property. Now, when I read this little item in parentheses, it says inclusive of active and passive parks and all these other items in parentheses. Were those items that are now being specified, were those counted as open space before? More importantly, were we before counting the structures for all these things, like the community center, access, which to me I take as roadway, were those being counted as open space before?
Does anyone care to respond to that? Counselor, do you have anyone who can address that question?
I am obviously going to defer to staff
Okay.
since it's the staff report, but these were always part of what was in the conceptual plan. We had active parks and passive parks. This was part of the previous conceptual plan. It's just now that when all of that is counted, there's actually an increase in the acreage.
All right, so what you're doing is now you're really defining more of the uses of the 37 acres.
35.7.
Well,
Oh yeah, 37. I'm sorry.
Now
you're right.
37.
So we're counting now. We're counting paved roadways as open space. Because when I see access, to me, I interpret that as pavement.
Let me come and point to an access to show you what we're talking
Okay.
about. This says park access. So
Oh.
here's the park, but there's going to be a means from the road to have access to the park. It's still green space, it's not a road.
Okay, let me see behind. Okay.
And actually, all of this is part of the green space. This is part of the green space.
Okay. Yeah, I think I see that.
Behind
Okay.
Target.
So okay.
It's against the loading docks of Target,
Okay. All right.
Yes, that's going to be
That's fine.
wonderful.
on the downslope of that. Yep.
Yes, I can imagine how wonderful a high-end unit would be looking at the
Yep.
loading spaces of Target. Boy, that'll be a good sell. Yes, does anyone else wish to address this? If not, then, is there any, yes, Mr. H., you have another point?
I just want to thank Commissioner Prevotel. I thought his layout and vision for that property was absolutely fantastic. However, obviously, these aren't the cards that were dealt tonight. I wish we were.
Microphone.
I just wanted to compliment Mr. Prevotel on his layout of the Biscayne landings. I thought his plan was pretty darn good. And obviously, these aren't the cards that were dealt tonight, unfortunately. I wish we were, I wish we had this concept, but we don't. So here we're at. This is where we're at.
And I think we would go through approvals a lot faster if we saw everything in place and they would just build it out
Yes, well,
instead of.
be that as it may, do we have any member of the public at this point that wishes to speak to this issue? Any member of the public? Last call. I hear no thundering herd. I see no rising cloud of dust. Therefore, the public hearing is closed. Gentlemen, we're going to bring this to a vote. And I think I can speak for all the members of the Planning Commission. No disrespect to anyone out there, but it's highly unlikely this plan will ever win an architectural award. Clearly, the high-rises overlooking Central Park in New York are not threatened by this project here. And I just can't wait to see a hotel overlooking the water treatment plant. That will clearly have occupancy problems from day one. I fail to see the logic in putting it there. And lastly, when those swamp gases come out of that water treatment plant, there is nobody going to be shopping in outdoor open-air retailing. Yeah. You couldn't put the swap shop there at the point of a gun. Yep. However, this seems to be the vision. My God, is it lacking. I think every member of this commission has come to the point of believing that Mr. Prevotel's concepts offer so much more value than what you're proposing to give us here tonight. Nonetheless, as Mr. Reach has said, these are the cards that have been dealt. It's a sad commentary that we spend so much professional advice and service and have gone through so many architects, and we have such a really poor quality product. Nonetheless, the chair will call for a motion. If anyone chooses to make a motion.
I vote like to make a motion to deny this.
Mr. Prevotel makes a motion to deny.
Second.
We would need a second on that. Well, gentlemen, we have to go one way or the other on this. We cannot sit here in utter silence. Now,
I have a
either...
question
Just
for
advisory.
Yeah, I have a question for attorney.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You may ask your question, but we
I'm sorry for staff. I apologize. If
make it to staff.
for right now, let's say, I'm not saying which way this is going to end up, but if this is disapproved, does the applicant, can this applicant's previous conceptual plan still move forward?
It'll go to City Council for final approval, whether
Yeah,
or
with
not
or without
you.
our recommendation,
Yes.
it goes to City
We're
Council.
just advisory, really means little.
Yeah.
And your options
That's
are
why
to
I'd like to make the
approve,
point.
approve with conditions, or deny.
All right, gentlemen, you've got your three
Just to make the
options. Mr. Prevotel has put a motion on the floor. If it is not seconded, it cannot move forward. Do we get an alternative motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
You'll move to approve. That would require a second. And I hear no second on that.
Obviously, my brain, we're all trying to come up with we're trying to come up with we know the project has to move forward, but none of us like the project.
Not as it's currently envisioned.
And we're damned if we do and damned if we don't.
It's there. And it's
Don't
gotta move
sweet talk
forward.
it, Kenny, it doesn't.
And I'm just like,
it's-
So what message do we want to say to our council and to the people of our city? Do we want to be that, oh yeah, the planning commission stood behind this as it is, that they were behind this and that's the end result? Or was that we, did have the foresight and the forewarning that there are better options? And I'd like to think that we would take
well,
that
that's
course.
that's one way to vote it. We can approve it and say that there are better options.
No,
Well,
no,
but
we
you
would-
put that
can't,
caveat- we
you
could put
can't
that-
exactly do
Yeah,
that, though.
I mean,
You
put that
have to
caveat
either
in there.
go-
Obviously, we're in a
It's a
state of
double
distress
negative
up
here.
here. And,
Yeah, you can't do that. You
and-
guys,
and it's my opinion that the elected officials don't see it the way we see it.
I think that's safe to
Obviously,
say. Yes.
They don't see what we're seeing.
They apparently don't smell the swamp gas out there.
And
Gentlemen,
this
we-
is
we-
our chance to present that to them.
Mr.
to make it clear
Prevotel
to
makes a
them.
good point, gentlemen, and you need to do one of two things. You either need to,
I will second Mr. Prevotel's denial.
Charlie Ernst has seconded your denial. Then,
If for anything, it's a symbolic,
Exactly.
I think we need to send a message to the city council that the best was not done and they didn't see the best come forward.
the plan is sadly lacking in imagination. All right, we have a motion and a second. We reinstate your motion, Mr. Prevotel. Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
James, do
Chairman.
you withdraw your motion for the purpose of going forward at this point?
Yes.
All right, motion has been withdrawn. We now have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? In hearing none, the chair will call for a vote on the motion to deny.
No.
Deny.
No, no.
No.
I'm going against the motion. I'm a nay. So I
So, no, the motion is to deny. Are you in support of the motion or not?
no.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're in support,
Support of denying.
you're in support of the motion to deny, and you're in support.
Yes.
No, wait.
No,
I'm
no.
not in support of the motion
He's
to deny.
not- he's
Well,
not
that's the
supporting.
motion made and
I
seconded.
said no. If I was in support of it, I would say yes.
All right, so, your motion, you're in favor. You're in favor.
Yes.
Kenny, you're opposed,
I'm opposed.
and you're opposed. I'm in favor, 3-2. It's recommend denial. Thank you very much. Our next commission meeting will be oh, by the way, Counselor, we do appreciate your attendance tonight. Thank you
The-
very much.
Thank you.
Certainly. Oh, you've got our attention. You don't have our consent, but you have our attention.
And I do appreciate you hearing all of my concerns, as many as they were, and,
You're making your point, Mr. Well, no,
No
we,
matter how it goes, ultimately, I hope you, Commissioner Prevotel, and all of you will be pleasantly surprised.
oh, don't we all hope so? All right, thank you very much. Our next meeting will be
January the 6th.
January the 6th. All right. Thank you very much.
Staff would like to make one comment, one announcement actually.
Yes.
Tomorrow, December 3rd, Wednesday, 6:30 to 8:30, we have a Brownfield informational workshop at Griffin Center, and everyone is encouraged to attend. We will have educational information and tax incentive information and tax credit information regarding brownfields located and contaminated sites located in city of North Miami.
All right, thank you.
And we have brochures here if you choose to pick one up.
All right, and the chair has one announcement for the benefit of one and all, now that we are just the family here. On Saturday, the 13th of December, the chair is hosting a holiday cocktail party at the chair's home, actually in the backyard. And some of you have been to some of those affairs. And you're all welcome to come back. There will be a full liquor bar, there'll be a full wine bar, there'll be beer available, and various other things happening, and it's being done as a charity benefit for the Marion Center School for Intellectually Disabled People. And what that means is you're expected to buy the 50-50 tickets. So have some cash in your pocket. If you're at a point where you can seriously itemize your tax deductions, you're welcome to drop a check for $100 to the Marion Center School at the gate as you come in. I have no problem taking your checks. However, most people are not in that $100 market, Kenny accepted. And for those of you that otherwise would attend, tickets are sold $6 for $5. You need to buy some. We've got to raise some money for the school. And, the chair is not feeding you. The chair is going head over heels in debt on the liquor and the bartenders and the security parking detail in the front. Therefore, if you actually expect to eat, you're requested to bring appetizer platters. Please don't plan on dinner.
Or a bag lunch.
Yes, something.
What
All
was
right.
the date of the next meeting? I'm sorry.
The next meeting is January the 6th. Okay? So if any of you choose to come, and most of you have been to the house, in fact, I think all of you guys, in fact, have now been. Well, you can all come back on the 13th, which is a week from this coming Saturday, 7 to whenever.
Perfect.
All right?
Thank you for that invitation. Mr.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Let us all go down and party at the